What's up, storytellers? I'm Clark Rowanson, the Magic Engineer, and this is another episode of Spells and Specialists, where we use stories and magic to teach technical topics and communicate science. This is part 3 of our series with Max Farmer, our Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. So real quick, we're going to do the introductions. If you haven't seen the other videos, either on Ecofectology on my channel and potentially on a podcast format, we'll see by the time we get to this.
It's in the works.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the others in various formats, we'll go ahead and do introductions. How are you doing, Lovis, our eco-friendly magus, who is with us as always?
I'm okay. I'm doing good. I've been excited about this since we sat down last time. It's been ticking over in my head. I think we've got a really, really cool seed crystal. It doesn't have a choice but to be a cool magic system. So I am very excited.
Awesome. All right, Max, if you just quick introduction, then we can get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm Max Farmer. I'm a small animal general practitioner veterinarian over in Wisconsin. And I am also a writer, Maxwell Farmer. I've written a couple different LitRPG series. One actually has the main character as a veterinarian, so feel free to check it out.
In the first part with Max, we got to learn all about veterinary medicine and animal nutrition, stuff like that. Then we dug into the seed crystal, and the one we ended up with was pretty cool. It's always cool, but it never amazes me how cool these are. The one we ended up with is that people can bond with animals and monsters. Have it on my notepad. Can bond with animals and monsters to gain their traits, powers, and weaknesses over time, but they must maintain the health and well-being of their bonded. And when we ended things off, we were also talking about it being a situation where you merge with your bonded, potentially separate with your bonded. Anyway, that's kind of up in the air, whether they're always kind of there, whether you can leave them behind, whether it's like Damon's from his Dark Material. We don't know. There's a lot going on. Any other tweaks or nuances you guys want to add to that seed crystal before we dig into the blueprint? Because that's what this portion is all about, is we're going to map out high-level understanding of how it fits into the world with the magic system blueprint.
Yeah. I think maybe solidifying some of those options will help in particular, and if either of you have like suggestions in particular what you think could work smoother, because I feel it could, as you said, like kind of, or you may have implied like going in a lot of different directions. It could be like, yeah, they're always there. I know one thing I'd brought up about before was kind of a Pokemon-esque sort of kind of situation, was like, if you're bonded to a creature, it becomes like super tiny or something like that. Because like if you're bonded to like the great bull of the north, you're probably not gonna be walking around the middle of the city if you got this gigantic bull, like quite literally a bull in a china shop situation. And so, or it could be just like, yeah, you can go hang out and go do your thing elsewhere. But I didn't know if there's anything that any of you had thought of in particular, just because I had thought about there could be a little bit of difficulty, and this is me maybe more thinking character direction in that kind of way. But I'm like, people would have to be very particular, and I guess that could be a fun character thing too. But it's like, if you bond with the great snake of the mountain, it's just like may make things a little more difficult to interact with.
Especially since we've kind of been talking about the magic being focused on the evolution of the person rather than just the strength of the creature you bond with, right? So that might be useful to make it so it's more about how they affect you and your relationship with them rather than just the power of the thing you connected with. Kind of like, Game of Thrones, the power came because she was bonded with dragons, and dragons are awesome. This would be kind of different.
Yeah.
It might also be interesting, like, if you didn't have to have the animal with you, people would never be quite sure what tricks you had up your sleeve if you could leave animals out of the visible scope of where you are, right? And people would probably choose to show, like, if you bonded with a tiger or something, you might bring your tiger on a stroll to impress people or something, but you might also want to keep that as like a secret weapon and hide it away.
Yeah.
So
One thing I think. Oh, go ahead.
I always tend to drift towards horror, so I think to combat that and looking ahead a little bit, understanding that Lois was very interested in doing some cozy fantasy, I think we should go with the chibi monsters.
Okay.
Chibi monsters.
So that when you bond,
They
they
are
shrink
cute.
down into these tiny little chibi versions of themselves. So they're not really effective on their own, but they're still there for you to interact with and bond emotionally with and engage with and feed and take care of.
You
But
just have this tiny little like hippopotamus in your pocket. Or something.
and then you can have people have special, you have the dog backpacks, right? You have a special backpack that you can carry them around in, so they can be
So-
playing and napping and
I have an idea in particular. Now that you're talking about this, is kind of just generating some stuff in my head. Two things. One, I think it would be really cool in a world building aspect of whatever you're bonded to, you share some sort of aspect. Now it doesn't have to be major, but like we talked about like the different academies. You know, we had theorized about like if there's like a fox academy, like everybody has like a fox ears or a fox tail or something like that. But the other thing I think could be good that can also make it more challenging in that kind of way is that like whatever you bond to, I mean, this is again, admittedly sounding a little Pokemon-esque, but like you have to defeat it. Basically, like, you know, if you want to have the great snake of the north of the mountain as your patron, you're going to have to beat it into submission because otherwise, like, submit or die, snake. And, you know, and the snake's like, fine, I will become.
I think that can work with monsters and wild animals.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be necessary with domesticated animals, but we talked about taking on the physical traits, and I really like that. And before we get too much into the details, even though I really want to get into these details, because this sounds, especially with that decision, this sounds just adorable and fun. Because there's
adorable.
all kinds of things for like now the school, we talked about the school of the striking snake.
Yes.
Maybe it's like an actual agreement with an intelligent giant serpent, and those are its children that it is lending out to the school.
Oh my goodness.
It's like you bond with my children, they go out, they get world experience, and eventually you break the bond and they can then go off and be their own creatures.
Yeah.
Just said I wouldn't get in the details. Okay. We've got the blueprint. I got a little bit of the seed crystal put in already. I was just calling this the bonded evolution magic.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Because that's what we're talking about. We might, at this point, maybe we could call it the Chibi-Menagerie or something like that. Because I would definitely set the tone, and I love it. Okay, so with that, fortunately, I have worked with Max before, and I have worked with Lovis a lot on the blueprint. So there's not going to be a ton of explanation of what these settings mean. We're just going to kind of dig in and start setting them. There's plenty of other videos on my channel and just in Spells and Specialists where you can learn more about what these different settings mean. Now, don't fool yourself to think that that's going to make this go faster, because we learned that when everybody knows it, that actually means we can talk about it in more depth. So what type of magic are we thinking about? Let's just focus on hard soft. How are we feeling on this hard soft axis?
I want to say I do like the idea that it being at least a bit more soft, just to have some extra mystery about it.
Mm-hmm.
I still want there to be, like, as we talked about, like with different schools, like there's definitely an understood aspect of it, but like that there could be mystery behind it to a degree. I want to lean a little bit more towards soft. So that's where I would go in that direction in particular, since it's more mysterious.
I was just working on one of my next videos, which is about how to create a soft magic system. And one of the parts of, like, it's all about knowledge, right? And part of hard and soft is the scope of the magic system. So I think you're right on, just because we're talking, the way this is developed and integrated, the possibilities are endless. So no matter how much we learn and how much we know, it's like trying to say that it's like trying to say you're a vet of everything.
Yeah.
Right? You know a lot, but you also understand that you don't know a lot of other animals and then imagine if we had magical creatures that didn't follow standard biological norms and other things like that. That would
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. And just there's so much that what we know at any given time is just a smaller percentage. So I think you're right. It's definitely soft. What do you be thinking in terms of rational or irrational? I'm honestly feeling more rational.
Yeah, I'm feeling more rational as well. Just because, again, even though there's mystery, I again kind of come from a character plot sort of perspective. I think of like with the world that, there are people that have practiced and had understanding over time that there is some general understanding of things, in particular, so not as irrational or nebulous.
Well, and since we want kind of manipulation of the system and what we're talking about of like managing the needs of the animals, that's all stuff that should be known and kind of logical, right? It should be able to look at the animal and say, these are its needs, these are its abilities. So if I bond with it, this is what I should expect over time, and here are the different ways that I should use it, right? Or I should be able to use it. What do you think, Lovis?
Yeah, I think I agree there. Like, I think it would be interesting for somebody to be like, okay, if I bond with that animal, I know roughly how difficult it is to take care of it, and I also know roughly what kind of abilities I would get. So there's like a strategic, like for the people who do this, who go to these academies, or because last time we spoke kind of about like fighting them, or in like a tournament where you have to use your own abilities to fight somebody else.
Yeah.
Or to clear some obstacle or something like that. There would be like a strategic moment of like, you are so difficult to take care of, but you could give me really cool abilities. But I think it's which abilities you get might not be clear cut. So you wouldn't be like, okay, well, I'm definitely going to get really good hearing, or I'm going to get echolocation from a bat, or I'm going to get really good eyesight from whatever.
Like, actually, I have to drink blood for the rest of my life.
So like
exactly.
The options are known, and then once you know what you're getting, the applications and extrapolations from what you have is all very rational. I also really like that.
You don't know exactly what you're going to get.
I also like that because that really drives up the value of the schools, right? Because then if you go, even if it's just something like a venomous serpent, you have a school that has a curriculum and study and analysis of like monitoring your bodily changes, so that they can then tell you, it looks like you're developing along this aspect track, and so you're going to want to start changing your diet in these ways. You're going to want to start training with these techniques. This is a mentality you're going to need to pick up. Like, that's what you're going to need if you want to be the most effective guardian, adventurer, whatever.
If you want to be the very best, like
if you want to be the very best. So and that requires a level of rationality. So I think that is solid.
That gave me a really cool idea for part 4, which I'll keep the surprise.
Yes, keep notes.
I've also written something down.
Yes, I already have notes.
I'm just going to write this down so I don't forget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while you're writing that down, next up is transference, which again, just ability to hand off and pick up stuff. With most of these, I'm going to check your guys' gut reaction so that I don't bias you. And then I'll throw in my 2 cents and tell you when you're wrong.
So
and then I'll bias you.
Post bias.
So, I'm going to say, I'm going to go with, in particular, I like actually kind of a like lower transference, actually.
Really?
Like, I think lower transference, the way like you can get it easily, but like I'm kind of leaning towards like you can only get one at a time or something of this nature. Like I'm trying to like think of a way that it's not just like, hey, you pick up this, you pick up this, you pick up this, kind of like, because in my head I was thinking maybe like people like get these paths that like they're like age 15 or something like that, like they're old enough to do it, and so it's kind of a strictly kind of monitored sort of situation, as well as like kind of potential risk of like negative implications of breaking said bond.
So we did talk about that some, right? We talked about like you could bond with more, but like the negative aspects and the difficulty compounds.
You would go crazy or
So,
something.
like-
There was like voices or something in your
You
head.
would go crazy and you might end up in a situation where you can't eat anything without getting really sick.
That's true. And like I was thinking again, maybe to like, and maybe there's like a study of it, but you know, like the maximum, you know, that someone could be bonded with is like 3 or something like that, like safely bonded. But then there's like somebody like, I have 10.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm a madman.
see, I was
But
getting a
is-
vibe of more. Sorry, go ahead, Lovis.
Well, I was thinking like for transference, like can you steal it from somebody? And I
think that could be a good villain concept.
yeah, I'm like on the fence because if you're bonded with a creature and you're quite, you know, you love that creature now, and somebody steals it from you, that would be awful.
That would be.
But I don't know how, and like it would probably, like you probably wouldn't be able to do it subtly. Like it
This-
would hurt, I would imagine.
This isn't a cozy, but
We don't
we
have
could
to do
do-
cozy.
we
I don't
could do a
want
magical
to drive
version
this
of
entire
John Wick
thing.
where somebody steals his chibi dog
Oh.
and then he goes to get his dog back.
This is the reason I have not watched John Wick, because I know about this freaking dog.
Yeah.
I know I will not handle it well.
So I was actually thinking that transference was probably closer to medium high, because it sounds like it's very easy to initiate the bonds. We know that people can break the bonds, and in my head, from how we've been talking about it, what I'm assuming is that if you break the bond, the animal goes back to its normal form instead of the chibi form, and you lose access to a lot of the attributes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At
I
which
would
point,
say-
changing and picking things up is actually not that difficult beyond the difficulty of overcoming the individual creature you are dealing with, but that's more of a challenge of the one you choose to bond with than the actual nature of the magic itself.
But we could still have a maximum number of,
We could.
Yeah.
like we can
We
still
could.
put a limit on it.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking even if we wanted to, because this gets a little bit nuanced about, you know, we said creature or monster, and I even thought about like, what if it's like the technical safe sort of thing is like one monster, one creature, or something like that. And again, that could work in particular in the kind of like, I guess
So
we'd have to think about what would be the benefit for the creature that would be bonded.
So we
And
can do all of that. I don't know that that actually affects the transference. That's
Okay.
a lot of balance and restriction stuff.
Oh, okay.
In terms of being like you can only have one or one of these types or so and so
Okay.
on. So transference is just about how easily can it be picked up and exchanged, and it sounds like it's fairly easy. Like there's some
Okay.
challenge in making sure the animal actually wants to bond with you or getting the
Maybe.
respect of the creature.
I could
Um,
see that more medium high.
What are we thinking? Medium, high?
I would say
I'd
medium.
put it in medium. I'd put
Okay.
it in medium
Yeah.
because I think, like, yeah, probably there's a school of thought that says you have to conquer this creature, which would make it not, you couldn't accidentally do it necessarily, but I still think it would be cool to have, you know, if you going back to what you wanted as a from a character perspective, an underdog might have, just been kind to creatures, and creatures have willingly bonded. Like, I don't think we should make that impossible,
Yeah,
but it's not easy.
different
I
schools
don't
of
think it
thought.
should be.
Kind of
Mhm.
like negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement dog training. One seems to work. One is harder, but when you do it, the outcome is
It's
undeniably
much
better.
stronger. Maybe
Yeah.
the bond is stronger when you've done
That's
it
true.
that way.
Or maybe even just the rate at which your abilities develop is stronger, right? I don't know. We haven't talked about specifically what causes the evolution and the change over time, but so prevalence. How common is this? Just from how we've been talking about it, sounds like this is probably going to be pretty common
high.
throughout the world.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe it's going to be pretty high. I mean, like, because then it's like either schools or even, as we said, like we can put domesticated pets in
Uh-huh.
there. And so then it's like, you know, then you got like wealthy families that have like, you know, like Yes, I have the noble pug. Yes, and they'd have to
Oh
sound
my
like that.
goodness.
They'd have to sound like
We're
that.
a pug
Oh
household.
my
Yeah, we can
goodness.
tell.
Just
Well,
how we've changed dogs to be like cosmetic, like fit in your purse, and like the what was it? The French bulldog was or something
yes,
was
Yeah.
yes.
or court, right? What if like the courtiers or something? Every time the fashions change, they change the animals that they bond with, and they get like a stuck up nose or pointy ears or something, and that's
That's
the new
great.
fashion.
And like all the more reason to have like really flamboyant, over the top, and like bizarre pets if you're rich, right? I want to
Yeah.
have a peacock that nobody has seen before, so that I'm walking around flaunting
Oh,
colors and feathers that nobody else has. That's
now you've got me on illegal trade of creatures. I'm off now. But
okay. So
also, I think the academies should be elite. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it should be that easy to go to school.
no, that's going to be expensive.
Those should be
Yeah.
elite.
But I'm
and
thinking,
then
like the prevalence in particular just
Yeah.
would be high. Just because, I mean,
Anybody could do it.
yeah,
anybody,
Yeah.
like, as I said, like, if they're 15 or, it could be a certain age, like, they're at the point that they can have this bond. And, like, how many people have pets? So many.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I, found a turtle and it was
Yeah.
my pet.
Yeah.
So.
And it
That-
doesn't, and I think the level of the school will vary depending on like the rigor of the curriculum, what you're being trained for, and what the animal is they specialize in, or the group of animals they specialize in. I imagine there's like farmer trade schools, right? Where it's coming in and they're like, yeah, if you are going to bond with some standard domesticated animals, here's the benefits of doing that. Here's the different ones you can go, and here's how it's going to help you. Like,
There could be even a kind of going superhero style, but like, a Krypton related philosophy of like a nation, like, hey, okay, you're 15, your job is going to be a farmer, and you are assigned, you can pick one of these three to be your thing. And that way it's kind of, and could be a character concept too, about like, hey, I don't want to be a farmer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
That's cool.
could be a whole different, a specific nation, how they would do things.
I am loving this so much, because now I'm picturing the person who went off adventuring, bonded
Mhm.
with a hydra, and then came back and set up a farm in a swamp.
Yeah, you gotta make it work.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, or
boy.
somebody who wants to have a peaceful life, but then they're like, no, adventurer. It's like, how
Adventurer.
farm with a hydra?
Yes. I also think having the prevalence quite high will make it easier for us to communicate some of the topics that Max taught us last time, because they're so important to communicate,
Yes.
because everybody has pets.
Yes.
And
And-
so in our world, because everybody has pets and everybody treats them a certain way, and maybe that's not the best, and so I think having the prevalence relatively high will make it easier to bring those concepts into the story.
And with this system, you could duplicate some of the misconceptions and misappropriate and inappropriate behaviors and tendencies that like different owners have. And you can replicate that in here in some of these relationships, right? So much interesting stuff to explore. Okay, so source, internal or external? I think this is, well, is it internal or external?
I guess technically, if we're going from, as you said on there, the creator perspective, the source is external, because the source of your power or the magic comes from what you're bonded to.
Yeah. So here's the question I always ask. So when I have access to the magic, is it possible to cut me off from the magic? Like, so do we want to go the daemon route where the animals need to be kept nearby? Or is it basically, as long as you're bonded, you maintain the powers?
Yeah, good question. I'm thinking in my head, like, as long as you're bonded, because then like, oh, we're holding your chibi prisoner over here, and I guess, they could be like, and again, this is more nuanced stuff we can discuss, but it's like, can you still be bonded and unchibi them? It's like, well, guess what? They're big now.
I
Uh,
just had that idea. It's like, oh, we captured your Hydra. You better do what we say before we kill it. It's like, oh, well, guess what? It's not bonded anymore, and he still likes me.
yeah. So, um, so I would say, yeah, I would say like they don't have to be exactly close by because that could character-wise that could make things more interesting in my head.
But you can be cut. You could be cut off from your magic,
Yeah.
primarily if somebody killed the bonded animal.
I would say so. Yes.
Yeah.
If
Or-
they killed the bonded animal and maybe after death or something of that nature, like there's lingering power or something like
Uh-huh.
that, depending on the quality of the bond you had. You know,
Uh-huh.
like I raised this thing from a puppy,
Right.
and it you know all the way, and then it's like they still have like some lingering power or something
Right.
like that,
Right.
and
But
that could be internal, but I would say external still.
yeah, I definitely
So does
think
it make a difference that like is the magic that you're able to bond with the creature, or is that you can do that comes from an internal place, but the traits you get come from the animal you're bonded with. So what is the magic?
So the
That's
bonding
valid.
is one magical effect, right? That ability to create that connection is a single magical effect. All other
Okay.
magical effects then appear once you have bonded. So when we're talking about source, it's about the flow of energy. So does the energy come from outside you, through you, and then create the magical effect? Or is it entirely within you? And I think from what we've been talking about, I think it's definitely external because setting aside the initial bond, like that's the one piece that is going to drive I think you're right. The bond is more internal than external, but all of the others, I think from how we've been talking about it, it's all going to be coming from your bonded, which is why it's in chibi form, right? It has been shrunk down because all of its power and all of its potential gets funneled through you so you can do these things.
Yeah. And I would say too, I guess the a way you could think of it as more external too is like you can't bond with another human, like so you can't,
That's
you know,
true.
like so, like if, so that human doesn't have the external power, or they don't have their own internal power to bond with you. So that's where I would still say it's more external, personally.
Okay.
Now, is the energy finite, renewable, or infinite? So this is weird because a lot of the changes we've been talking about have been more passive changes that take place in your body, but there will be cases where, especially with monsters, there will be creatures that have magical abilities themselves. So then when you go about using the magical abilities, how does that work? So if I can then do fire breath, can I do that indefinitely? Does that have a recharge period? And like,
Yeah.
what are we feeling here?
I'm going to say more renewable. Just, I'm much more leaning towards action adventure. And so like I think in my head, like somebody cannot, keep going dragon punch, dragon punch, dragon punch, dragon punch forever. I feel like at some point, just like with any exertion, eventually your stamina or whatever you use would run out. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if any of you watched My Hero Academia or not, but like how their superpowers are technically just like extra functions of their body, and so they have to basically train those up in that kind of way.
So,
and also we spoke all about nutrition, right? And that you
Yeah.
have to maintain the health of the creature that you're bonded with.
Mhm.
So I would also say renewable in that the
kind of in a
creature can
macro scale.
continue to produce it as long as it's healthy and as long as you feed it, and if it's tired, it rests and all of these things. But also kind of towards like renewable but finite if you don't take care of it, right? If you don't feed it properly or whatever, then
Okay.
it disappears if you don't take care of it.
I'm really digging this because the other thing we can do is we can make it so if depending on what aspects you get, you're actually tapping into those aspects of that creature. So, for example, just physical endurance. If I am bonded with a bull, and because I have to focus on this because it's adorable in my mind and I love it, and you end up with a tiny little chibi bull. That means I have both my normal endurance and the endurance of this bull. And that can be reflected in how the animals are behaving. So I know I'm reaching my limit when when my little bowl starts getting worn out and is tired and sluggish, I'm like, oh, I'm about at the end of its stamina reserves, at which point all I've got left are mine. So yeah, I think you're right. I think renewable, especially if you start taking in some of those like mental capacities and things like that, and you have to take care of it in order to continue to renew the energy, because if you don't, it just depletes and depletes and depletes. And yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. This is so great. Okay. Next one we haven't really talked about at all. Flux. Is the amount of magic in the world increasing, decreasing, or staying the same? Is the number, I guess in this sense, it would be the number of bonded people and the strength of those bonds. Is that going up, declining? Well,
I
what's
would
going on?
say, I would say in terms of creatures, well, I would say probably in general it's going up over time with when we're including domesticated animals in this aspect. If we were just solely like wild creatures, I would probably put it at neutral, just thinking circle of life sort of situation.
Right.
Like, same amount of creatures dying as the same amount of creatures are coming into the world, but I'm thinking about like that including domesticated creatures, they don't have to worry about predation and all those kinds of things if they're well taken care of. And so I think it's just like with human population that just things have increased over time.
But also, if we're talking about the type of connection, like if the connection to like a magical creature or to like an exotic, flamboyant, whatever creature,
yeah,
is, I don't know, somehow stronger or more special or something.
So we are talking at a kind of universal level here, not necessarily an individual level.
No, but are you talking at a regional level? Like, is it increasing or decreasing? Like, if you went to find these creatures in order to bond with them, therefore decreasing their population and making them endangered.
So that's the only reason I'm pushing against that, is that's getting very specific about a specific monster, right? Whereas the magic in general, if we're not looking at a very specific type of relationship, I kind of side with Max that I think that is probably going up. Certain types might be getting more rare because they haven't necessarily been hunted to extinction, but they've been bonded to extinction. There's no more wild ones out there to make more for people to bond with. Like that could definitely happen, but that would require us tweaking the perspective a little bit as we mapped this out.
Okay.
That's definitely some fun stuff to think about for the world building. And something to think about for when we get down to consistency, because those kinds of variability is what will drive the consistency lower overall. Because the more we talk about something, the more we talk about any of these settings where it's like, well, this piece would probably be more over here, but this piece would probably be more over here, that means you have lower consistency, which isn't a problem. It just is, and you just need to be aware of it.
I just really want to spend like 2 hours just going over character stuff after talking about all this. I have so many ideas in my head. And
write them all down.
Write them all
because
down.
you could throw them out in the next section.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
We won't be able to do the whole 2 hours.
I know.
Anyway,
I know.
This next one I think is super easy. Naturalness. It's about how integrated magic feels in the world and how natural and normal it feels. I think like this is at the top, I think.
Yeah. I think pretty high.
And I just realized that with this, as it's going up and up, society might be splitting into more and more different caste systems.
Oh, yeah. Which I think will impact ease of use.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you want all of your guards to be bonded to dogs, obviously. Like, anyway.
That would be terrible. They'd be a terrible one.
The dogs are owls, right? Just, anyway. Ease of use. Yeah. So what are we thinking for ease of use? It's all about how easy it is to use the magic effectively and safely.
I would say, I mean, I kind of like where it is right now, kind of that,
Medium low.
A little bit, like, not completely low, but like, like it's kind of a cast or, kind of a trade secret and stuff, like, yes, we of the Ram Forgers, like we know how to, specifically, to kind of, I'm thinking just like how we're just talking about this, like in my head, like I'm thinking of very much like a Wuxia Zanxia world in this kind of way. And so I think if knowledge was shared readily, it would be easy. But I don't think in this world with this type of system that knowledge would be as readily shared everywhere. And so that makes a lot of self-trial and error.
And knowledge is important. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lovis? I'm
I mean,
kind
I
of
think
feeling
if we
medium,
have
medium low. Yeah.
Yeah, if we have these academies and, you know, the way they build their whole school of thought is by having, you know, kind of guarding their secrets or their traditions or their methods for doing something, then you probably can't learn how to do that unless you go to that school. So for the average, which would probably be quite an elite place, so for the average person, it's probably difficult to learn how to do competently, or, you know,
Yeah, and I was also
easy to
thinking,
bond but difficult to control.
yeah, I was thinking in terms of like mastery is difficult, and also just the fact that these complications we've added, that you have to deal with the flaws and inherent problems and the instincts of the creatures you bonded with. That alone is going to make it harder to use it effectively, right? Because that means if you don't know everything about this creature, then you can only be so effective with it, especially since I don't think bonding should just give you telepathy. I don't think you should be able to talk to them straight away, because then you would be able to tease more of that out. I think keeping it more on the veterinary medicine side, it is like dealing with animals, so you have to monitor and watch them. Like, I fed you this amount and it's affecting your behavior in this way, which honestly would be even more difficult when they're in chibi form, because small changes will make a bigger difference. So you have like less leeway. You would have to be more precise, which if you wanted to get into like cultivation style stuff, that's where like pills, pill making is always a thing in cultivation. That could be a big thing. Very specific pill ratios to feed your bonded.
True. That is very true. Because that makes a huge difference. Like, I mean, I tell people, like, I have a big dog. Well, one of my dogs is very big. And, you know, I tell people it's kind of like the same medicine for little dogs as for big dogs. It's just like bigger milligrams, so it's going to be more expensive, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I could see kind of you in the inverse, like, oh, yeah, like this would work for a bull, but now I have to think about like a cat-sized bull.
Mm-hmm.
Portions of a mig per kig.
Yeah, because you have to feed them and you have to feed yourself, right? Okay. So then it becomes a thing of like, well, how many calories do I need now?
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, no, because then you could have like a specific. Again, I'm getting too much into this about it.
But yeah, we joke about something similar, because we have a 15-pound dog, and
Mm-hmm.
with small dogs, the problem is that just a few extra kibble per meal every day will get them overweight. So then all you change is when they're overweight is you make sure you take out those few extra kibble, and you better make sure you take out those few extra kibble. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. But yeah, small changes add up, which I don't know. I'm really loving that here.
And and we have a 10-month-old, and so, you know, my other dog, the smaller dog, he just waits right by the high chair, gets all those extra calories.
Yep. All right, reliability. I swear I didn't set any of these in advance, but I think reliability is exactly where it needs to be. Because just the reliability of the magical effects and the abilities you're going to get is not consistent.
Yeah.
I think once you have them, they're fairly consistent, but
I would say, like, I think it's good at the medium in that way, because for certain places you may know, like, again, like a school that has a certain regiment, you may have an extreme high reliability, but then you have like this one wandering adventurer that bonds with this rare creature, you know, that was maybe thought to be extinct, and it's going to be very low because they're going to, like, information is very sparse.
Right. And even just how we are as living beings, right? The way we perform the way we perform a task can vary from day to day, depending on how much sleep we've got, how much food we've got, how the stars are aligned. So even then, the strength, if you have a dragon, the strength of your fire breath might change from day to day.
Yeah, if this dragon's feeling sick.
Yeah. What do you think, Lovis?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime anything is dependent on people, it's not going to be completely reliable. So as soon as people are involved, it's never going to be really reliable.
Fair. All right. So then consistency, like I said, is kind of the error bars on all of these different settings. So we know reliability probably has some larger error bars. What about the rest of it? What about the system as a whole? What are we feeling for consistency?
Gosh, that's a hard one. I want to say medium to medium high, because like the extent to which the system can deviate from its defined settings, like. Can you give me an example, like of fluctuation with consistency?
Yeah. So, Allomancy from Mistborn, high consistency. Have you read Viridian Gate Online?
Yeah, every single book.
Yeah, high consistency.
Okay.
Because, well, LitRPG gets tricky. Have you read the? No, I would say it's high consistency because the way the classes behave, like they all match in terms of source. Like there's not, at least we didn't see a specific class where the source was suddenly external to themselves or anything like that. All of them have internal renewable energy. It's all a neutral flux across the world because it's not like there's more travelers coming in, but that's more travelers, not necessarily more magic. The prevalence isn't really changing unless, again, you're looking specifically at travelers. So there, the travelers are the weird part. So it'd still be a fairly high consistency because no matter where you look in the system, the transference, source, flux, naturalness, all of those are going to be pretty much the same setting.
I would say
Marvel has wide variability when you look from person to person to person.
Okay. I would say I'm going medium high because I know we talked about quality of bonds playing a factor. And if you have like a low quality bond, as you talked about like negative reinforcement or something like that, like you defeat this creature and then like you just consistently, beat it down, kind of in that kind of way. You may get this horn power, but it's like weaker, or, maybe even like we could incorporate the creature's feelings towards that person and that like negatively impacts some of that stuff. So I would say medium, just because again, I talked about with the human element that you're going to get some varied results.
Yeah. What do you think, Lovis?
Yeah, I think I'm on board with that. I do think that because the way I understand it is reliability is like for each person individually, right? Every time they use the magic, it'll perform the same way or something. Or every time somebody bonds to a particular creature, it'll perform the same way, which we've decided it doesn't always.
Reliability is about repeatability of results. So if I put A plus B, if I do A plus B, does it always equal C? And
right, and consistency is how often it does not equal C.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. Or how if it's not exactly C, how far away from C can it range? Like, if I do A plus B, is it A plus B equals C plus or minus 50, plus or minus 100? Or is it just straight up equals C exactly every time?
Yeah, then I think it's good at a medium range.
Okay.
Because it's not, there is variability in which traits you get, for example, or how the bond is, but it's not that you will get traits that creature doesn't even have or something. So the options are known.
Right. Okay. Well, that is the blueprint for this exciting Chibi-Menagerie. That's just how I'm thinking of it. I can't help it. We started with Bonded Evolution, but I like the Chibi-Menagerie better. Any other last minute things we want to touch on before we wrap this up and go into recording part 4?
Oh, one question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you bond with plants?
I was assuming yes. I never thought to say
I
that,
would
but
assume
yeah.
yes as well.
Okay.
Creature, living thing.
One thing I would say, we can bond with plants. I would just, because that I was thinking more creatures because I was thinking veterinary medicine, admittedly, which is okay.
Yeah.
Um, can we maybe caveat of like sentient plants? Can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and because again, this is a magic world, in that
Uh-huh.
kind of way. So like, creatures, like, venomous fly traps or whatever, Venus.
Yeah, because I was thinking Venus flytraps.
And so I was just like, I guess you could have in a way like maybe these plants that people bond to are creatures that have evolved into plants.
I
Kind of in
don't
that.
I don't think that plants would be very common, but I think so. What if the limitation was that you have to be able to communicate with it, which I don't mean talk, but communication comes in a lot of ways, including body language, treats, reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
Basically, if you could train it, then you could bond with it.
I
That
think
would
that's
very much limit the scope, I think. Of
I mean, it
plants.
would, unless like you talk to your biologist friend where you talk about how plants do talk and respond.
Yeah,
If you
yeah. They are
understand,
aware.
and if you
They are
understand
aware.
how they are aware, if you were able to communicate with them through those kind of chemical interactions, you would then be able to bond with the tree.
Yeah. But I am open to making that a limit because we are talking about veterinary medicine. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah,
I
I
would like
think
it.
that's fair. I think if you could communicate, that's fine. I still do like the idea, just kind of in a way, somehow keeping it bestial in nature. Whether it's like a flower wolf or a, it could be a Venus flytrap. But I was just even thinking about, like, I don't know if you've seen the science about how, they said that killer whales originally came from like a wolf-like creature
Mhm.
and over time had adapted and changed. And so I was thinking like there could be these weird, like, this weird forest of trees or
Like an
plants.
ent?
Yeah, or yeah, like migrating trees or something like that. And then like they're like turtles, or they used to be turtles, and then they
Mhm.
bury themselves, they plant themselves under, they're there for half the year, and then they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think I would be okay with that. I just didn't want it to be like, yes, we have the pine group and the sequoia group, and that I'm like,
It would probably be reserved for monsters that
Yeah.
are plant.
yes.
Botanical monsters.
I think that's fair. Mechanical monsters.
Which, something else to point in, with all of this, we have kind of been operating under the assumption that this is a magical world with its own kind of structure, with its own sort of magic system of the creatures and the monsters and all of that, which is something outside the scope of this. But any of the fantastical stuff you could anticipate, I don't know. Okay, yeah, we can stick with plant monsters. We can keep the idea for bonding specifically with plants for a different story, Lovis.
Yeah. I think it'll come up. I'm considering who I know is on the lineup, it'll come up.
I kind of just assumed that those types of people would be exceedingly rare, and it might be something that maybe they were only able to do it because they were already bonded with multiple other animals, which then got them to the point that they could communicate with the trees. Something where it's like, oh, you bonded with like a bird and then a butterfly and then another hummingbird, and somehow that is letting you interact with this flowering bush that I don't understand.
Which these animals pollinate.
Right. So having it like, if it were to be there, I imagine it would be difficult to get there. It would be at multiple levels of abstraction, and most people wouldn't see value in it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I like this. All right. We're gonna wrap it up before we just talk about more and more stuff. So again, in case they haven't been paying attention to any of the others, where can people find you, Max?
Though there should be some links down below, but I do have a Facebook profile page, Maxwell Farmer Author. I have a Discord and a website as well. I will post updates. I'm big into, I really enjoy memes. So if you enjoy relatable memes, feel free to enjoy the memeage. So that's where you can. Yeah, yes. And also, hey, if you like merchandise as well, shameless self-promoting, I do have this shirt. It says brief
Good grief.
That's one
It
of the
is.
characters. He's a talking skull.
He's a talking skull, and his catchphrase is "Good grief," and so you can actually buy this merchandise over from the Mountaindale Press website. So yes, I do have that available as well for some shameless self-promoting.
All right. Fantastic. Well,
Love
this
it.
next part is going to be over on Ecofectology, which you should definitely go look at. Enjoy the content, like, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, please